Auto Mundial is sponsored by Trade Centre.
Welcome to Auto Mundial, the weekly car news and review show. This time we're taking a look at a new BMW SUV with a difference, the hydrogen-powered iX5.
We also have Mazda's latest EV, the MX30, and an unconventional saloon from Lexus.
Plus the new 2024 Volkswagen Atlas and the fabulous Lotus Emira. That's all coming up, but first. Abarth has announced its pricing for the new 500e electric hot hatch. The launch edition Scorpionissima will be available from £38,695, although prices for standard edition models are yet to be confirmed. Just 1,949 Scorpionissimas are to be built, a nod to the year the historic Italian brand was founded. The electric 500e produces 152 brake horsepower and can hit 62 miles per hour from rest in 7 seconds. For those who aren't ready to make the switch though, the petrol-powered Abarth 695 produces 180 horsepower, accelerates quicker and is £13,000 cheaper.
The new BMW X5, as we saw a couple of weeks ago, is an evolution of the old car, with a few bits of nip and tuck to keep it current among the sea of competitors. However, the internal combustion and hybrid models don't make up the whole story. This is the BMW iX5, a new hydrogen-powered model, BMW's alternative to hydrogen cars from Toyota and Hyundai. While the UK may be lagging behind in terms of hydrogen infrastructure, over on the continent things are picking up pace, and BMW is looking to cash in early. Only 100 iX5s are due to be built, scheduled to hit the road this spring. So what exactly have the engineers done to turn a regular X5 into a pioneering FCV? Well, of course the engine has been ditched. Instead, the iX5 gets two carbon-reinforced plastic hydrogen tanks, each capable of carrying up to 3 kilos of hydrogen. These then power a Toyota-sourced fuel cell, which sits where the engine normally would. Through some chemical reactions, the fuel cell converts the hydrogen into electricity, thus powering the car and letting you drive it as you would an EV. The advantages, however, come when you need to recharge. Instead of plugging in, you can top up the hydrogen tanks largely as you would a petrol car. The only byproducts are water vapour and heat, the latter being used to warm the cabin. The electric power can be stored in the battery, which is also topped up through regenerative braking. An electric motor drives the rear axle, putting out a healthy 396 brake horsepower, getting the big SUV from 0 to 62 miles per hour in under 6 seconds. BMW reckons you should get just over 310 miles between top-ups. That's plenty of range, but do make sure not to stray too far from your nearest hydrogen pump. Distinguishing the iX5 are a few blue trim details and some aerodynamic adjustments to the front end, but otherwise you'd never know this was anything different from a regular X5. With such low production numbers for now, the iX5 is still a bit of an experiment, but if it goes well and infrastructure continues to improve, a hydrogen future could be closer than we think.
With just about every manufacturer now getting on board with electric cars, Mazda has released its all-new EV offering. Called the MX30, it's a stylish little coupe crossover designed to stand out from the crowd. It's a great-looking car, in keeping with Mazda's increasingly premium image. Essentially an electric alternative to the excellent CX-30, the MX-30 is an intriguing EV debut in a segment that's quickly becoming very competitive. The styling will of course be a big draw to buyers, and it needs to be, as the quirky little Mazda gets a range of just 124 miles. In a class of Hyundai Konas and Kia e-Niros that'll happily achieve well over 250 miles on a charge, that simply isn't good enough for buyers who cover big distances or don't have the luxury of charging every night. It's likely to be a second car then, and that's fine for city cars like the new electric Fiat 500 and the Honda E, but it seems odd that Mazda would release a practical family car with a significantly lower range than a Renault Zoe. If you can look past the range though, the MX30 is a genuinely compelling car, and just because of the way it looks. It's full of interesting details like the back doors that open the wrong way, like an RX-8, to create a pillarless opening, and the use of environmentally friendly materials in its construction. The Mazda's party piece though is its interior. Following the brand's Kodo design philosophy, it's simple, beautiful and functional. Mazda's cabins are up there with the best right now, and the MX-30 is no exception. The centre console is lined with cork, a reference to Mazda's origins as a cork company, while many of the fabrics are made from recycled bottles. It gets the usual array of gizmos and gadgets, including an impressive array of safety tech to keep you pointing in the right direction. Powering the MX-30 is Mazda's new e-Skyactiv powertrain. 143 brake horsepower drives the front wheels only for a 0-62 time of 9.7 seconds, onto a top speed of just 87 miles per hour. It's quick enough to charge though, with a 40 kilowatt DC rapid charger getting the 35.5 kilowatt hour battery from 10 to 80% in under 40 minutes.
So what else is out there? Well, if you fancy a quirky little electric crossover, the Kia Soul remains a great option. It's powered by a 64 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery that it shares with the e-Niro and Hyundai Kona Electric, which is good enough for an impressive range of 280 miles. This is no second car. With a range like that, you can really use it every day. It's quick to charge as well, with a 100 kilowatt charger getting it to 80% from empty in under an hour. Inside, the Soul is very spacious, which is unsurprising given its cuboid shape. But the boot is a little bit of a letdown. With just over 300 litres of space, it has a smaller compartment than the Mazda.
As much as we like the Mazda then, it really does seem that it's a purchase you'd need to make with your heart rather than your head. Its range does let it down, but if you only do short journeys in your car and you have a charger at home, the MX30 is an immensely fashionable way of getting about.
After the break, a new VW SUV and the gorgeous Lotus Emira. Auto Mundial is sponsored by Trade Centre. Auto Mundial is sponsored by Trade Centre. Coming up, should you buy a Lotus rather than a Porsche? First though,
it's sometimes easy to forget that Volkswagen, Europe's biggest car maker, has a vast lineup of cars that we never see on European roads. There are various Asia-specific models and cars built in South America. And then there are cars like this, the Atlas, built specifically for North America. As is appropriate in the land of biggest is best, the newly facelifted Atlas is predictably massive. It's 8 inches longer than a Touareg, yet still hits US dealerships at just $35,000. It seems like an awful lot of car for the money then. So what's it really like? Well, a car like this is all about practicality. And the Atlas is as practical as they come, with 3 rows of seats that can comfortably accommodate 7 adults, and an equally commodious boot. There are loads of handy storage bins too, with plenty of cubby holes and enough cup holders to host a small garden party. For the 2024 model year, the Atlas gets a load more standard kit, including a heated steering wheel, ventilated front seats, and a new 12-inch infotainment system, a big upgrade from the 8-inch screen you got in the old car. Other than that, it's business as usual in the Atlas cabin. There are some new trim options which add to the more modern look, but otherwise it's as spacious and logical as ever. There are some scratchy plastics that are a little too easy to find, but don't forget, this is significantly cheaper than a Land Rover or an Audi. The outside has also been refreshed. As well as a revised front end with new lights and grille, there's a new selection of alloy wheel options. Under the bonnet, the V6 has been ditched in favour of a smaller but mightier 269 horsepower 4-cylinder motor. All models come with an 8-speed auto box, sending power to all 4 wheels, or just the fronts on lower spec cars. The same updates also apply to the Atlas Cross Sport, the lower, sleeker version that still manages to retain 3 rows of seats despite its chopped roof. In this segment though, the big VW has plenty of rivals, not least this, the new Kia Telluride.
Since its introduction in 2020, the Telluride has always been a good-looking car, punching well above its weight in both desirability and ability. And now, for the new model year, Kia has decided to give the car an aesthetic makeover. With a few bits of nip and tuck, the new Telluride looks better than ever, with a new grille, restyled headlights and a new front bumper with trim to match the contemporary matte finish on the trim. The biggest changes, though, are on the inside. There's no doubt the Telluride is a nice car, but with a starting price of $36,000, it's hard not to be seriously impressed with the cabin. Leather and high-quality wood finishes in a car this big are usually reserved for Cadillacs or BMWs, but they are here in abundance. The party piece is the new screen panel atop the dash. The enormous panel consists of 2 12.3-inch screens, 1 digital instrument panel and an infotainment system, another feature usually reserved for more traditionally premium manufacturers. Navigation is now standard across the range, as is a Wi-Fi hotspot. 2 new trim levels also join the lineup, but it's the range-topping SX that still impresses the most, delivering a true luxury car experience for a reasonable $52,000. All versions use the same 291 horsepower naturally aspirated V6 with an 8-speed auto box. Performance isn't electric, but it is on par with its rivals. Power is sent to the front wheels only, but for an extra $2,000 or so, all trims are available with 4-wheel drive. Self-levelling rear suspension is available, handy if you're towing, and its 8.4 inches of ground clearance is useful off-road.
Unfortunately then, VW's small updates to the Atlas aren't quite enough to see off the big Kia. The Telluride offers everything you could want from a big SUV, and all at a reasonable price.
When choosing a new executive saloon, it can be all too easy to head straight down to your local Audi, BMW or Mercedes dealer and pick one of their very impressive, if slightly obvious, big, imposing cars. However, might you be better off looking at options outside of Germany's Big Three? This is the newly revised Lexus ES, Japan's answer to the E-Class and 5 Series. Fresh from a midlife overhaul, the somewhat left-field choice doesn't look all that different than before, with just a new grille and narrower headlights marking it out. There are some new alloy wheel options too, but otherwise the ES is unchanged aesthetically. Instead, the engineers concentrated on the chassis to make the new ES more comfortable and better to drive. It gets some updated suspension, which Lexus says has made the car more predictable, especially at high speed. The ES was always a relaxing car to drive, but Lexus has tried to refine it even further with incredible attention to detail. For example, the electronic braking system has been recalibrated and the brake pedal itself is now slightly bigger, with more bracing around its mount to reduce vibrations to your foot. The door mirrors on top spec cars have been replaced with cameras, as we've seen on numerous EVs. Sadly, the integration here is not the slickest, with the pictures being fed to a pair of rather incongruous screens mounted on the A-pillars. Thankfully, the other tech updates are a little less dissonant. There's a smart new 12.3-inch infotainment system, standard across the range, with built-in navigation and smartphone integration. Elsewhere in the cabin, there are some new leather and wood trim options, but the interior is largely unchanged, but still very distinctive, stylish and modern. High-spec cars also get new LED headlights with blade scan adaptive high beam technology. This uses fast-rotating mirrors to focus the light beams and increase your field of vision when your lights are dipped. And the smorgasbord of new tech doesn't end there. The safety systems have been updated, allowing the car to spot more potential hazards and remain more stable during evasive manoeuvres. Under the bonnet, the ES retains its sole powertrain option, a 2.5-litre four-cylinder petrol motor hooked up to an electric motor and battery pack for a combined 215 bhp. Sadly then, it lacks the broad range of engine choices you get in its German rivals, and it's also somewhat lacking in performance. 0 to 62 takes a casual 8.9 seconds onto a very modest top speed of 112 miles per hour. It is economical though, running up to 54 miles per gallon.
However, those looking for a non-German exec saloon aren't limited to the Lexus. This is the Jaguar XF, possibly the best-looking car in this class. Available with a selection of petrol and diesel motors, and as a saloon or an estate, the XF is more in line with BMW and Mercedes. It also gets a beautiful cabin with JLR's excellent Pivi Pro infotainment system. And then there's this, the Volvo S90. It's been around for a while now, but it still looks classy as ever. The minimalist interior is a joy, even if some of the tech is getting on a bit. However, now available only as a plug-in hybrid, you should expect to pay a lot more money for the Volvo than the equivalent ES or XF.
The Lexus then will continue to be rather a niche option. The Jaguar and the Germans will make more sense to most buyers, but as it always has done, it will no doubt continue to appeal to those who are in the know.
It's been almost 2 years now since Lotus first revealed the Emira to the world. Now though, the first customer cars are finally beginning to roll off the production line in Norfolk. The Emira though has a tricky job to do. When most new cars are released, they're filling a gap in a manufacturer's lineup or replacing an old model. The Emira though is replacing two cars, the diminutive and iconic Elise and the bigger but no less fun Evora. So, how has Lotus placed its new sports car? Well, from launch it's positioned more in Evora territory. It uses the same supercharged Toyota V6, this time producing 400 brake horsepower. A smaller Mercedes-AMG 4-cylinder is also on the way. This will be the lighter of the two versions, closer to the featherweight Elise, and rivaling the likes of the Alpine A110 and Porsche Cayman. That'll be available later in the year, so for now let's focus on the flagship V6. It weighs in at 1,458 kilos, so it's far from the lightest Lotus ever made, straying somewhat from founder Colin Chapman's philosophy of simplify and add lightness. It may represent a change in attitude from Lotus then, although not as much as its new electric SUV, but it's still less than a Porsche Cayman. With that weight though, Lotus has managed to create a true Cayman rival. The old models always felt a bit cheap, buzzy, and not very luxurious, meaning they often became weekend playthings rather than daily drivers. The Emira though could be driven every day. It has fancy infotainment, many luxurious and exotic materials lining the cabin, and enough insulation and sound deadening to allow you to complete long motorway drives without developing tinnitus. There's aircon, Apple CarPlay, and everything feels genuinely well made and long lasting. And don't think all these frivolities and creature comforts have detracted from the driving experience. It's still very much a Lotus, and a real match for the powerful Cayman GTS. With its 6-speed manual gearbox, the mid-engined Emira will hit 62 from rest in 4.3 seconds, and we expect the AMG-powered car won't be far behind. Alas, it isn't cheap. The 4-cylinder car will start at a little under £78,000, while the V6 is currently available from £82,000. In our eyes though, it's worth every penny. It's a truly competitive, well-made and special British sports car, with a sense of fun and charm a Porsche can't quite manage.
Join us again next week on Auto Mundial as we head to Kensington Olympia to bring you highlights from the 2023 London Classic Car Show. Auto Mundial is sponsored by Trade Centre.